See how quiet the room got? Nobody lost their wallet. All right. Both financial and executive coaching begins at 11 a.m. today. You'll find financial coaching hosted by Fidelity Investments in Majestic 7 and executive leadership one-on-one coaching hosted by J.P. Morgan Chase can be found in Majestic 8. And if you are heading to breakout sessions after today's amazing discussions, they begin at 11 a.m. and are located in King Ballroom number 1 through 3. King Ballrooms number 1 through? And lastly, the BMX Showcase and Lounge in the Royal Ballroom opens at 11:30 a.m. Today's backyard barbecue cooking demo hosted by Prudential begins at 3 o'clock p.m. there. Moving on, it looks indeed like we're ready for our next panel discussion. And as we begin our next panel, can we just, if you don't mind, if you want to carry on your conversations, if I can take that liberty, let's move that outside the room. Our next panel, gentlemen, is going to begin soon. Okay, gentlemen? Gentlemen, our next panel is going to begin soon, so let's give them that honor and respect, if y'all don't mind, please. Our next panel is going to begin. Moving on, it looks like we're ready for our next panel, session 4, Fathers in Finance, the Role of Black Dads in Building Family Wealth, a truly timely topic, whether you're a father or plan to be in the future. Black fathers play an important leadership role in making saving, investing, entrepreneurship, and multi-generational wealth creation a priority of black families, communities, and culture. We have a powerful discussion planned about how fathers lay the foundation of financial education for their children, increase their family's net worth, and leave a legacy of prosperity to future generations. Before I introduce our next panel, may I have everyone in the room sit, please? Gentlemen, and ladies, can we all have a seat and get ready to give some respect to our next panel that's coming forward? Can we all sit and give the stage their due reverence? Any other conversations? We can take that out of the room, please, if you don't mind. Any other conversations? Let's begin and welcome our next panel, the Vice President for USGO, Southeast Region for FedEx Express, Patrick Elam, Financial Planner for Prudential Advisors, Delvin Joyce, Managing Director for Bank of America, Bernard Hampton, and our moderator, the President and CEO of KHUFU Enterprises, L.L.C, Kerwyn Phillip. Please give them a round of applause. Our next panel begins now.
Good morning, everyone. How y'all doing? Good, man. Thank you all for coming in and sharing on this great conversation. My name is Kerwyn Phillip. I'm the president and CEO of KHUFU Enterprises, L.L.C. Several years ago, I wrote a book called Malik's First Job, Financial Principles for Teens. It's about a young man, who the main character names Malik, who goes on his first job interview. And then shortly thereafter realizes, he sees people within his community that have difficulty managing their finances. So he goes out to seek advice from his father, right? And research shows that most children pick up their financial habits from their parents, right? And as a son, he seeks out wisdom from his father. So this conversation that we're going to have today is critical and it's very important. So let me go ahead and introduce our panelists today. I'm going to let you go ahead and go first, Bernard.
Hey, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Bernard Hampton, Managing Director with Bank of America. I lead our consumer banking division for the eastern half of the country, and proud father of 3 Gen Z children. And props to Black Enterprise Magazine and Butch for inviting so many of our young people. And I was fortunate to take advantage of that. Our middle child is in the back there, came down from UCF to be able to join us this week.
Awesome. Good morning, Black Men XL. My name is Delvin Joyce. I am a certified financial planner with Prudential Financial. Actually joined Prudential after a brief career in the NFL, played for the New York Giants. If we have any Giants fans in the room, I have 2 words for you. Next year. Right? Next year. But joined Prudential in 2006, been there for 17 years. And I am also the proud father of 3 Gen Z kids as well, 17 and 15-year-old girls, and a 13-year-old son. So, very happy to be here.
Good job, man.
I'm Patrick Elam. I've been with FedEx for 30 years. I started my career as a handler at the company and worked my way up the chain. So I have a little bit to talk about during this session about, what I can teach my kids. But I have two beautiful kids, twins. They're 20 years old. Both of them are in college. This is their junior year. And hopefully I'll be able to take something back to them after this session that I hadn't taught them yet.
Okay, great. And myself, I have three children. Oldest son is 24, 19-year-old daughter, and a 15-year-old son. So real quick, how many fathers do we have by a show of hands in the audience? Okay, great. Now keep your hands up, those fathers. Now, how confident are you that if, God forbid, something was to happen, that you know that your children would take care of your finances correctly? If you're confident, keep your hands raised. I see a lot of those hands came down. Like, this one over here is kind of iffy, right? He's like, which one? Right? Yeah, so again, like I said, this is a very important conversation. Let's go ahead and get it started. So the first question that I have is, in what ways can black fathers serve as role models for financial responsibility and wealth creation within their families and communities?
That's a great question. I'll get us started. I've worked hard to remain a student of what to do and what not to do. And so that comes from analyzing people who seem to be better off, doing really well, passing on generational wealth, those that don't really want to understand why. I would offer, whether someone would describe it this way or not, people tend to, as they're making progress, set goals financially. Your early years goals may have been to buy a car or hope to travel or build a home. I would offer the difference between those that do well, have generational wealth, leave a legacy, go beyond goals and arrive at purpose. And so one of the biggest differences and places that I not only challenge myself, but encourage those around me is to develop a financial purpose, because it becomes very different than goals. And so here's what I mean by that. If you go between goals to purpose, it tends to be about something far beyond yourself. You get to your children, you get to thinking about your family, maybe it's community, legacy, and all of the other steps that you would take, all of a sudden take on a different meaning. So if your purpose was about hoping to advance your family to the next level and leave something for your children one day, or even better yet, can you get to the point of thinking about your grandchildren, then when it comes to thinking about the basics of building a strong financial foundation of savings, all of a sudden takes on a different meaning. Maybe those things that you want slide to the back because you thinking about that purpose. And so that's a conversation that's always between my wife. We bring it to our children. And it also has gotten to the point where it becomes a form of shorthand. So there may be something I want to do, and my wife will remind me of our purpose. Or when she talks about buying another home or wanting to move, I'll remind her of our purpose, which was about our children never having to worry about their financial education. And once that was done, we've moved on to other things, to retire well, wanting to be able to leave something for our children or grandchildren. And so that shorthand impacts the way that we think about decisions that we make as a family. So not only setting a purpose, but then communicating that to your family so that everybody gets an opportunity to remember, what are we really working towards? And so then when you begin to add things like when somebody says, take advantage of all of the benefits that your employer may offer, for those of you that work for a company, fully. Whether it's 401k, deferred investments, not just dipping a toe in the water, but that's free money. How do you fully take advantage of that? Grounding yourself and always getting proximate to more financial education to make yourself better at making decisions, aligning yourself with a financial advisor. And even in that space, that's an initial step, but I always encourage people to go to the next one and try to find an advisor that looks like you, has a potential to understand your background, where you've been, where you'd like to go, that you could have an open conversation about. You do all those things with a different level of zeal when it's tied to a purpose that you're trying to achieve with your finances.
Yes. Okay, how about you, Delvin?
I love that framing. I'm totally stealing that financial purpose. I'm going to add to that just briefly. I think it's also incumbent upon us as black fathers to also shape the attitudes and thoughts that our children have about money. So in my practice, we spend a lot of time working with our clients around behavioral finance because we believe that, as Albert Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we use to create them. And so behavioral finance is very important. Now, watch this, Kerwyn.
Okay.
Let's think about some of the thoughts that we all grew up with about different things, right? Who can tell me what it means when it's raining outside and the sun is shining? Who can tell me? What does that mean? The devil's beating his wife, right? Now, that is so silly, but as an adult, right? I learned that as a kid, but as an adult, anytime it's raining and the sun is shining, I think the devil is beating his wife. Now, let me tell you some of the things I learned about money as a kid, though. I learned that money is the root of all evil. I also learned that money can't buy happiness. I also learned that it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven. And so there was a lot of shame and guilt around the idea of wanting to have money and build wealth. And so I think, again, for us, it's important for us to make money and make sure that our kids, we're intentional about educating them about the idea of money being a tool of empowerment. Not something that they should shy away from or be embarrassed about and try not to acquire. And so, again, I think it's important for us to also shape those values, and tying it to that financial purpose, as Mr. Bernard just said, I think is very important.
Yes. And I'll add to that, your kids are going to imitate what you do as a parent. And so as a father, it is very critical that you teach them about money and you teach them some of the curses of money. You want to make sure that they understand that money just don't grow on trees. My father taught me a valuable lesson early on. Me and my brother cut the yard across the street. Back then, we got paid $3 to cut the grass. So we thinking we're gonna split that up $1.50 a piece. Well, we asked my dad, "Hey, can you split this $1?" Well, he gives us a quarter back a piece. And we're like, "Where's the other quarter?" "You got to pay 50 cents for the gas I gave you."
Wow.
So right then, I learned the lesson that you have to work hard for what you want, but going forward, now that I have kids, I have to educate them as to, the power of money as well as the pitfalls of money.
Right, right. So, oftentimes, again, within the family household, talking about money is taboo, right? People don't want to bring up certain things with their children. So what's the best method to pretty much spark those conversations about finance? What's your thoughts, Delvin?
So one of the best things that I ever saw one of my clients do is they brought their kids into their financial planning meetings with me.
Okay.
And so we have a 5-meeting process, and they brought their young daughter into all 5 meetings with us. And one of the most important, impactful meetings that we have is something called our education meeting, where we educate people on the important planning concepts, strategies, and tools that will likely be included in their financial plan. And I can tell you the result of having her in those meetings means that now, number one, she understands how important money and planning is for her family, but number two, they have role modeled positive behavior and thought around money. And so that young lady now is my client, and just by them sparking that conversation, having her involved in that process, made her feel a lot more comfortable coming to me and having the conversations that we have now with her as a medical practitioner.
Wow, wow. Patrick?
Hey, I totally agree with that. My last financial meeting with my financial advisor, my wife and I decided to take my daughter.
Awesome.
And she went through the whole 9 yards of our financials. She understands where the money's going, why we're doing what we're doing. But that's part of, it's critical that they know that. And then, so I got to get my son in there because he's my problem spot. Every time I turn around, my wife is sending him a little bit more money. So this year, we got him a credit card, but it's a credit card that you have to pay off at the end of the month. you can't carry a balance on it. So hopefully that will teach him, you know, and then when it's gone, it's gone. You know, I don't know how you're going to eat at that point. But when the money's gone, it's gone.
Right. Bernard?
You know, I think about the root cause of that, and that question normally comes back to fathers who don't know or embarrassed about not knowing, and it makes you unwilling to have the conversation. We just did a Better Money Habits research study around Gen Z, and 3 things that should make all dads really optimistic to own the fact of, you know what, I don't know, so let's go find out together, is a really powerful statement to make. And I know everybody won't be in a position where I was fortunate to have parents that took me to go open my first account. They did the same thing for my older sister, younger brother. And it wasn't just, no, we can't afford that or do that. It was always, let me show you why. Let's open the checkbook. Let's look at the bills, look at what's coming in, what's going out. But the 3 things about Gen Z that came back in the study is that 60% of them are not only optimistic about the future, they are not caught up into brands. And I thought that was really refreshing considering the cycle of where most kids have been. So you think about these kids, largely the impact of COVID, but they came out of the other side of it seemingly much wiser when it comes to finance. They're okay to have secondhand. They don't need the brand name. They're more thinking about their future and what it means to save. All really positive messages that have largely been unlike other generations that have come before them. So there's something positive to be able to tap into with the way that they're framing, thinking about their future, their responsibility to save. And then the last thing is that they tend to be either on their way or think about themselves and the importance of being financially independent. And so our opportunity as fathers, as parents, is to really capitalize on that, own it, and know that you're largely dealing with a generation that will go at it as hard as you are to be able to chart a different path.
Okay. And let me touch on something that you just mentioned, the fact that a lot of times, you know, information not passed on to the next generation because the parents didn't know, right? So what are some practical methods that someone who's not comfortable or not as highly financially educated could have those conversations or, you know, help teach their children? What's like some practical methods they can take to take that approach?
Yeah, so I think about everybody being here. And even though I work in finance, I went to the sessions yesterday about finance because when you get proximate to it, you're always going to learn something new. I learned about a new game yesterday that one of the things my kids like to do when we're together for the holidays is play a game. Well, I just ordered one yesterday based on something I found out in a prior session called Cash Flow. And I love the premise of it, and I can't wait till it arrives, so that's how we're going to spend some time over the Thanksgiving holidays. But I also think about there's tons available in the marketplace. A simple Google search could land you the opportunity to think about a lot of nonprofits that might be in your neighborhood. The Urban League, for instance, where I've spent 11 years on the board, a former board chair, whose entire mission is around economic mobility and empowerment for people of color. And for our Palm Beach affiliate, there are programs for young people, adults, and for seniors focused around financial literacy and education. And so the ability to take care of, focus on programs like that. And then virtually, we've sponsored for a number of years now, free for the public at large. Just go to bettermoneyhabits.com and you'll find an easy to navigate website with tons of really simple, clean conversation videos about everything from savings and budgeting to how to save if you don't like the budget, understanding credit, understanding investments, 3 to 8 minutes in length, so very short periods and really simple for you to be able to really understand the basics, but also some really wonderful practices about how to change not only your financial acumen, but how to take practical steps to improve your own economic mobility.
Sir.
Yeah, so I think I think it can be very, very simple. And I think that a lot of times when we think of financial wellness and financial literacy and financial planning, we think about some good-looking guy like me in a suit and a tie, you know, talking about all these, you know, jargon that you don't quite understand. For me, it's all about teaching our children to be owners, the value of ownership. And so that sparks a very easy conversation about the stock market, because I do not see the stock market as a casino or as, you know, the Powerball or some get-rich-quick scheme. I see it as business ownership. I tell my kids the American stock market is a miracle, right? How many people have an iPhone? Raise your hand. How many people have an iPhone? All right, thank you. I own that company, right? I tell my kids that they should be owners of what they utilize. So my son, my 13-year-old spends tons of money every week on Roblox. He buys Robux and all these things. Well, son, you got to own Roblox. You have to be an owner of that company. My 17-year-old daughter, she drives now. Every day after school, she goes to Starbucks. Well, guess what? You need to own Starbucks. You have to be an owner of that company. And just starting that conversation, right? The reason that is a miracle is because I am not smart enough to start Apple. I didn't have to have the intellectual capital to create that company, but I can own that company. Just like, Tim, whatever his name is, the guy that owns Apple, right? I can own that company, Tim Cook, right? And so, again, teach your kids about ownership and the value of ownership. It's great to be a consumer, but you should also be an owner, and that really starts to create that dialogue around what financial wellness really means.
And I'll take that a little further and get into home ownership. My son, he would ask me, Dad, how many times have you moved? And I'm like, well, we moved 3, 4, 5 times, 3 times in one city. And he said, well, how much money does that cost you? I said, it doesn't cost me anything if you do it right. You use the investments that you make off of one house to pay for another house, and you keep it rolling. And so he's really starting to get involved in that, but we have to make sure that our kids understand how we made it and where we need to take them. So by me telling him about home ownership, about investing, those are things that will take him further. One of the things I've always talked to people that I mentor about is being patient versus instant gratification. And in our culture, we like to look good first before we own, something. So a lot of times you'll see a $70,000 Mercedes sitting in the parking lot of an apartment building. That just doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
So I want to make sure that the home ownership allows you to utilize that as an avenue. And also, when you talk about money's just a tool. It's a tool to get you to open more doors and provide you options.
Right.
And so that's what I try to relay when I'm talking to my kids about this.
Yeah.
Kerwyn, can I add some context to that? I love both of those statements and where Delvin and Patrick both went. So here's a couple of data points to think about that adds so much more credence to what they said. First off, the median income for black households in this country is $24,000. Think about all the black people stacked up. Where's the midpoint? $24,000 versus $189,000 for our white counterparts. When it becomes to averages, that becomes real money. Average net worth of a black household is $142,000. Of our white cohorts, $980,000. And so when you start to go back to purpose, what's the ability with those assets to be able to start to think about passing on generational wealth, that it doesn't stop with you, is pretty significant. And I share that number to not get defeated by it, but get inspired and driven. Because the two things that stand out are home ownership and investing. So how do those manifest itself? Brandeis did a research study that showed that 25% of the wealth gap is attributable to home ownership. That of the families that they tracked over that time, 51% of white households owned a home in each of the 25 years during the study, compared to 22% of black households. That a full quarter more of their wealth was coming from that home. Think about the largest asset that most people purchase. It's the thing that allows you to be able to hand over, transition wealth to other family members. The second was investments. When you look at what percent of black households invest in equity ownership in companies, mutual funds, it's 5% versus 24% of non-black households. So there's something about, yes, you shouldn't do things you don't understand, but that's why it's important to be able to seek advice. That's why I said it's important to connect with advisors, planners, CPAs, that look like you or have had experiences like yours or do work in our communities that increase the likelihood that we're able to have authentic conversations and engage. Paychecks are important. Paychecks will never equal wealth. To think that you'll accumulate wealth by anything other than owning something is like waiting on the tortoise to beat the hare, so to speak. So really important conversation around two big categories where we can do more as a people, but it requires planning, process, information, and chasing a purpose in a really intentional way.
That was a bar. I love that.
So, oftentimes, we come to events like this and, we have, the group of people that are here that are getting this information, right? What about the folks that aren't here, right? How do we spread this message of financial literacy to the people, within the community that really needs it?
Yeah, so one of the most impactful things that I have seen outside of a room like this is, I spoke at a family reunion for one of my clients a couple of years ago. And he said, hey, we always come together and we listen to Kool and the Gang, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and play spades and bid whist and do all these things. But over the last several years, we've lost several family members who did not have their financial affairs in order. And he said, I would like for you to come talk to our family at the family reunion about estate planning. And so literally, I show up at this park, as hot as I don't know what, as Miami, right? And for 30 minutes, I talked to this family reunion about estate planning. They still did the wobble, they still played spades, played tunk, but they also got the information. And I think for all of us, we need to make it a priority to not only make sure that our own personal financial families' houses are in order, but to also spread that wealth and that knowledge to our extended families, because ultimately you are the ones that are going to be responsible for their estates at some point as well. And so I just think creating opportunities to have that dialogue is very important.
I believe in the school of one of our pastors used to say, each one teach one. There's a lot of power in community. Right. And whether it is not knowing, keeping secrets, fill in the blank, I think one of the greatest things that we can do is as we learn something, it could be one thing, go tell somebody else. Yes, you always tell your children, talk about it with your family, but then your friends, family members, but also colleagues at work. When I think about, as a leader, the importance of my responsibility to not just invest in people, help them have a great career, navigate, see people who look like them, avoid pitfalls, et cetera. That's not always just about work for me. That there are just as many conversations I have with colleagues that we talk about finances, because I was fortunate to work with some brothers or for some brothers and sisters that did the same thing for me. And the thing that I valued most about them were not only our leadership or development focused routines, but the fact that they talked about wanting to see me, my family be successful. And so the opportunity or responsibility I feel to make sure I'm doing the same. But I encourage us as a people, as a community, to always think about how do we help support one another's development. As we learn something, we share it, and it's an opportunity to see that all boats rise, so to speak.
Yes, yes. Patrick?
Yeah, one of the things that me and my wife had started doing for our nieces and nephews and our kids that was in college is when they come get out for break, we'll take them on a trip, a summer trip. And so this year we were able to take them to Hawaii, but one of the things that we did was we spent 2 hours with them to understand, some of the challenges they were going through, and, they had to tell us some things about what they wanted to accomplish. Well, one of the things we talked about was money, how to gain wealth, but one of the questions they had was, how'd y'all pay for this? Mm-hmm. And basically it was very simple for us, but to them they had no idea. But we spend everything, we buy everything on one credit card. Mm-hmm. And we planned this out. First we had a plan, so we planned it out, and we purchased everything on one credit card where we got airline points, and we were able to pay for their whole trip just doing that. So that was a shocker to them. But one of the other things that we taught them is you have to have a plan.
Right.
You know, you have to build a budget so that you know where your money's going versus wondering where it went at the end of the month. So that's kind of what we do.
Yeah, I think that all ties back to, you know, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah.
Right? So that relates to finances as well. So are there any specific cultural or community-based practices that can be leveraged to foster financial education and empowerment amongst black families and their children?
Certainly. I'll focus on one part, and that is I always think that it's never too late to start. We're never as worse as or as bad as the worst moment in our lives. One of the things that we've worked to focus on as a company is economic mobility across client segments, including low to moderate income. And so we've partnered over the last year with a couple of groups that have expertise in credit counseling. So Operation Hope, we've piloted through 100 financial centers, another 200 through something called Navicor. Navicor does virtual credit counseling. And so when people get to that roadblock and can't do X or Y, there are resources. And so what we've learned from the clients that we've been able to help this year is that, one, that need exists, and so we're precipitously expanding our partnerships and sponsorships of those organizations over the balance of this year and through next year, because at the end of the day, all communities have an opportunity to succeed if they have the will to do it, but access to information education should not be a barrier to it. And so leveraging opportunities like that.
Yeah, I think we have to be more intentional about putting our kids to work. I mean, this is Black enterprise. We got a bunch of Black business owners in this room, right? And how many of you know that you can hire your children into your business and you can actually pay them $13,850 in 2023 and they pay no taxes? Better yet, you get a tax deduction for doing that. Even more so, if you are the only owner in that business, you're a sole proprietor or an LLC, sole member LLC, you don't even have to pay payroll taxes, neither you or the child. Now, here's where it becomes significantly important. You can now, because your child has earned income, you can now take $6,500 that nobody paid taxes on, put that $6,500 into a Roth IRA, and that money grows tax-free forever. Now, you don't challenge me on the math, but if you put $6,500 in a Roth IRA for a 14-year-old child, and that money grows, let's say at the rate of the S&P 500, right? 9, 10%, whatever the S&P's done historically. By the time that child is 60, they have well over $1 million, and it's all tax-free. And that was a one-time contribution of $6,500. So I don't know if we have any 60-year-olds in the room. It doesn't look like it. But think about how hard you had to work to accumulate $1 million. Let's think about that. And you could make a gift, right? Not a gift. You put your child to work. They earn income. They make a Roth contribution of $6,000, and they got $1 million waiting for them when they turn 60. Think if you did that every single year. And so I think culturally, if we can start to formulate those thoughts and those ideas and instill those thoughts and ideas into our children, then I think we all will build an economic base that was not given to Black people when we were freed from enslavement. We can build our own economic base.
Absolutely.
Right, great.
Well said.
So we're coming short on time, so we will get ready for a brief Q&A. So if you have any questions, I believe the microphones, I can't see them from here, but we have the microphones. If you can line up, we'll take a few questions. While we wait for folks to line up for the questions, what would you say was the greatest piece of financial advice someone gave you? Patrick?
I would say home ownership. Definitely that's the best piece of advice. And then the investments as well as savings. I think you have to be able to save and then utilize compounding interest and things that the brothers have talked about. Those things allow you to let your money work for you.
Okay, great. How about you, Delvin?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird story, but I told this story to Mr. Alfred Edmond not too long ago. I, as a kid, I was at a barbershop. I heard some brothers say, I'm not putting my money in that white man's stock market. And so I grew up thinking that the stock market was not for people that looked like me. It was for white people. And I was actually, when I was with the Giants, I was catching the Long Island Railroad to go out to Long Island. I saw a kid with a shirt on, and it said, on the back of the shirt, it said, Jesus saves, Moses invests. And I didn't even know what it really meant, but at that point, for some reason, it was like a light bulb moment for me.
Right.
Because at the time, I had all my money in a money market account at Fleet Bank, and the S&P 500 was at about 1,000 points then.
Yeah.
It's at 4,400 now. And that's about a 500% increase. And so at that point, when I saw that shirt, for whatever reason, it sparked this idea for me that I should own and take part of the American stock market.
Right.
Very similarly, wealth comes from equity.
Right.
And the same things that have worked for our cohorts, the stock market doesn't discriminate. So it is an opportunity to own, and there's many ways of doing it. It doesn't require a ton of money to get started, but the important thing is to get started.
Yes. All right, so you want to go ahead and take the questions, and like we know the protocol for the past few days. Name,
quick
who
and
you
dirty.
represent, and then state your question.
I'm going to try. I'm here with my father, so it's a really special moment for me, and I really appreciate all the advice. Wouldn't be here without him, and I don't thank him enough for all he's done for me in my life and my sister, so thank you. Quick question. I'm an elder millennial, so perhaps a little older than your children, grew up in the information age and the access to information age. Nothing is a replacement for experience and wisdom. But have you seen, or maybe Kelvin, in your experience, have you seen how your elders, father, baby boomers, perhaps can partner with, even in the own family, the information and access age to develop something special?
Yeah, so first off, I know your dad. I play golf with him, and so I think I got some of his money in my pocket right now.
That's what I'm saying.
To be honest.
On the Apple stock.
No, what's interesting about the generations is that I feel like, the season that you are in sort of dictates I think what your values are and what's important to you. And so Patrick talked about home ownership. I have a lot of millennial clients who do not see home ownership as their way to accumulate and grow wealth. Whereas if you were to talk to my parents, home ownership is it. And so I do think that is important for parents, sons, fathers to have conversations about what wealth actually means, and then come together and create a plan around that generationally. Now, I do want to caveat the generational part of that, because Mr. Grain said something yesterday or 2 nights ago that I had never heard before. He used a phrase called intergenerational financial security. I had never heard that before. And, I do think we do a disservice when we talk about generational wealth, because for a lot of people, that's very aspirational. That's very pie in the sky, that idea. But we can talk about intergenerational financial security. And what I'd like for you guys to talk about is, how do we create security for our family moving forward? Because there will be a generation that comes along that can create the wealth and pass that on for future generations. But let's start with the intergenerational financial security. I love that framing.
Thank you.
You take a question from over here.
I don't know that I answered this question.
All right. My name is Sean Herron. I am an investor, real estate developer, and consultant. So I'm here representing Carpe Vende myself. So I want to say thank you for all the information. I really appreciate it. I feel that when we talk about building wealth, sometimes we get distracted with building alternate revenue streams. So to your point, guys, the real score, the real building in wealth is equity, is ownership. And I think there are a lot of times business owners often forget that there's equity in owning their businesses, and sometimes that's how we leave wealth on the table. So your tax preparation business, your landscape businesses, all those are tradable and assignable assets that you can sell. So when someone dies, it's very important that you sell that. You don't just let that go away. So what are some things that you guys would tell entrepreneurs and business owners about how they can use that equity to create generational wealth?
I think you said that perfectly. I'm not a CPA, but I'll add your conversation to the one Kerwyn said earlier of not only as owners, the opportunity to employ your children and give back. And so the short of that is it lowers your taxable income. And so while you may work for someone today and think about that side hustle and make it more formalized and create a corporation so that you're able to take advantage of the tax benefits from it, becomes a very different story. And that's why anyone, regardless of level of income today, needs a CPA. I remember as a family, we spent far too many years doing our taxes ourselves versus when we made the steps to gain a CPA, to be able to have different conversations, we could have saved a lot more money sooner. But being able to put those two things together and ultimately formulate a plan that allows you to think about everything that's going in and out differently, how to organize and take advantages is just not beatable. It's the importance of getting advice. Somebody said yesterday, the 3 people you need in your life is a financial advisor, a planner, an attorney, and a CPA, and those things could not be more true, regardless of whether you have a level of wealth today or working and in the process of building wealth.
I want to give you an unpopular answer, right? It's maybe an unpopular answer in this room, but I would also challenge you to think about the type of business that you're going to start and how successful can you actually be in that business. So if you plan on starting a logistics business, hey, I got an idea for you. There's a company called FedEx, and they do it pretty well. And unless you can start a business as good as FedEx, you might as well take all that money that you were going to dump into your business that might fail, right? Dump it into FedEx, and you'll probably do pretty good. I mean, Amazon has a great business model. I'd much rather put my money in Amazon personally than to try to start my own business selling books or whatever, right? And so, again, think about the opportunity cost of starting your own business when there's all these other great American businesses that you can invest in, and to me, that is a miracle. Right? I don't have to be the smartest guy in the room to invest in a great American business, some of the ones that sponsor this conference right now. By the way, not a recommendation for anybody if my compliance department is in the room.
Yeah, and that's why I lean towards home ownership and property ownership, because those are things that you can hand down to your kids and start that generational wealth. And, you know, they can invest as well, but that if you take care of that on the front end, you already set them up with something that they own.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You got over here?
Well, first I'd like to start off by correcting Delvin. I don't think he's ever beaten me. But my question deals with generational differences. Here I stand as a baby boomer, retired. And, you know, I like to think that along the way that we've thought about creating generational wealth and doing some of the things that we thought were necessary to be able to pass things along, not only having children, but now having 4 grandchildren, being able to set the stage for the family. But sometimes there's a difference. And even if I look up on the stage, I see possibly 2 or 3 generations up on the stage where your mindset in one generation of how you're going to build and set that stage differs from my millennial son, who is a very bright and articulate individual with an engineering degree and therefore comes a very analytical mindset. How do you reconcile the differences between the 2 paths that we believe should be taken? Is it okay to have different paths, or should we look to come together to create a singular path?
I love the way that you're thinking. Definitely okay to have different paths, but as my mom would say, and probably many of your parents, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And so, perfect example, all 3 of our children, my wife and I are Gen X parents. Father's a traditionalist, mother is a baby boomer, and then the 3 Gen Z children. And so think very differently. I grew up in the South without a lot, but with a lot of blessings in the Carolinas. And great-great-great-grandfather group born into slavery. And the benefits of what I learned to consider a level of privilege is at some point post-slavery became sharecropping, got possession of 28 acres of land. The two brothers that got it split it. 7 of those acres have flowed down to my family. That's a blessing that my parents live on the property today, or my father's passed away. My mom still lives on the property today. Well, that was a blessing. But so as my kids became teenagers, they don't know nothing from the South. They're city kids. They've grown up in South Florida their whole lives. But when we go home as teenagers, I took them out to go walk that land. And to talk about the generations of sacrifice that went into it and why the parts of it that we now own in my family and how that land should never be sold. And here's the value of that generationally. And so whether they ever want to go live in South Carolina or not, they recognize the tie to it. We just built a home there. Whether they want to go live there or not, it's an asset that without a mortgage that we rent out during football season for Clemson games today. So it's a income generating asset for the family. So as we thought about it, it was, hey, here's something that we own and we'll pass on to kids one day that'll generate assets. So whether they live there or not, there's an opportunity for them to make money off of that and think about wherever they might want to live in the world. So who knows? They have a connection to home always, wherever in the world they decide to live. But those things begin to blend our history, legacy, and where they are today. And so I would tell you the 3 of them have a different level of appreciation for their background as a result. And so what are the ways that we can continue to make those connections for kids?
And Chief, I'm gonna piggyback on that too real quick. That's also the importance of creating your estate plan. Because you made that money, you get to dictate how that wealth is utilized by the next generation, right? Right? I'm glad to see your son clapping on that. But your estate plan, I mean, there are so many tools that can give you control from the grave. And my son says this all the time. He's like, but we're rich. I'm like, nah, you're not rich. Me and your mom are rich. You broke, right? And I have told my kids, here's what's in our estate plan, and you don't get anything until X, Y, or Z happens. And so really, I think articulating that will help to make sure that what's important to you and your generational thought process is also passed down to your son and maybe future generations. And by the way, I also want to give Chief his flowers while he's in here. This guy is the police chief in Charlotte, North Carolina, done a lot for young people in Charlotte, so everybody give this guy a round of applause. Chief Monroe.
All right, we have one last question over here.
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for the insights of this panel. My name is Wayne Francis, and I serve as the Chief Operating Officer for a large nonprofit serving the elderly out of New York City. So I heard what you were saying in regards to having those open and transparent kind of conversations with your children about finances and money. And I have 3 boys and a girl. But my youngest son, who's 11, is kind of sophisticated already at his age, and he asks what I consider to be kind of difficult questions. He wants to know, well, exactly how much do you make a year, and how much is the mortgage, and what kind of credit do you have, kinds of things like that. And while I do want to be open and transparent, at the same time, I don't really know what he's going to do with that information, so I try to keep it guarded. So I wanted to get a sense from you, is there like a certain age appropriateness that comes with when you should start having those conversations, or should I be an open book and just give them all the jewels?
I think you're right to be concerned. I think for all of us, it'll depend on our children and their ability to be able to recognize what's home business and what's public business. And sometimes there's about the guardrails of, hey, there are things that I'm going to talk to you about that's important for you to know because this is the life I envision for you. But that requires us to be able to talk about things that isn't fodder for conversations with your boys or your friends on the bus. And so that comes down to trust and the maturity level of the child. And like you, I have a daughter who's 13, boys that are 19 and 25. And it would be conversations at different times depending on which of them it was.
Love that.
But absolutely, sharing it's the things they need to know. Like I gave the example of my mom who would, or my dad that wouldn't just say no, but to have the conversations. Here's the bills. Here's what's coming in. Here's what we have to do. Here's how we stretch it. Gave a different level understanding of the sacrifices the family made, which left an imprint on me of the responsibility. So how does my generation go to the next level? How do I leave my kids in a position to go to the next? And so without it, I think the danger is worse to not share than to share, if that helps.
Patrick, you want to add on to that?
Well, I would say as early as they're able to understand, I would start sharing that information. One of the issues that we have is not sharing that information, and by the time our teenagers are out of school, they really don't understand a bank account. So as early as, I mean, you as the father, you have to dictate, or make sure that you don't share too much or too personal information, but definitely start having that conversation, because they need to, as soon as they can understand it and start acting on it, then they need that information from you.
And the importance of understanding consequences, of making mistakes with it. And so all the good, the bad, the ugly of why you're sharing, here's the risk that you're trying to help them avoid. And sometimes it can be about starting with a small account, or making them have it could even be a fake account, and you just talking about if you gave them an allowance and what do they do with it, what are the expenses they would have, and those examples to begin to understand money, the earlier the better.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause for our panelists, Patrick Elam, Delvin, Joyce, and Bernard Hampton. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you back here at 1 p.m. Can we give one more round for our panel? Amazing as it was, take those pictures. I hope you're taking pictures, doing selfies, tagging, hashtagging, and again, be back here promptly at 1 p.m. I believe our workshops are happening right now in the rooms, and you know where they are, so we'll see you back there, those who are here, and make sure you're back here promptly at 1 p.m. Go out and make a difference. See you later.
At life and music, I promise you, I'm gonna shout you out and I'm gonna testify.